Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the hearUSout podcast. This is our very first episode, and it's a podcast from the heart of Urban Saints. We are a youth organisation, and I am your host, Paris. I am the digital outreach coordinator at Urban Saints, and I have my other host with me here, and I'm going to allow him to introduce himself.
Yo, what's up? My name is Nesu, and I'm the youth engagement and content coordinator at Urban Saints. And yeah, it's just a joy to be embarking on this new kind of pasture land. Yeah, with Paris. So that's what it is. Yeah.
Vanessa, how are you today? What's been a highlight of your day so far? Can you just give us a little insight?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm actually coming from a conversation with another youth worker, and we've just been journeying through. He's actually someone who's mentored me as I've come up doing youth ministry and youth work. And so it's been such a joy just journeying with him and just keeping him up to date with all the stuff that's been happening. And just to have another sort of voice in my life to
Mm,
guide and shape, and also just to navigate some of the challenges of youth work with me
yeah.
and just my life, really. So that's been good. Yeah. What about you? What you been up to?
Nice. Today I started making content. So I produce a lot of TikTok content for Urban Saints. So I've been doing a lot of editing, gathering content from other members in the team and putting them together so we can share that with you online. So yeah, that's how my day started today. But I'm excited for our first podcast and to delve into a bit of a deeper conversation.
Yeah. I hear you. I have a young person. So I'm a youth worker in another substantive role, and I have a young person who every time he's excited about something, he says, "Let's go!" And that's that's how I'm feeling right now. He's got some of
That's
his
how you're
energy
feeling.
in me, like, "Let's go!" Anyway, so I'm pumped as well. Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
good.
that's how we're feeling about this new venture. And you guys are going to be joining with us on this journey of podcasts and many future episodes. So I'm
Yeah.
excited. So can you tell us what are we going to be talking about today? What's our first topic or question of the day?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be like, I think because it's a podcast that is catered for youth workers and youth ministry and just discussing all that kind of jazz, and we'll talk about that later actually. Yeah, the first question is gonna be around what that means. But before I do that, let's do our show and tell. Show
Okay.
and tell. You're gonna go
Can you
first. I think yours.
explain can you explain what this segment is going to be about? Because it's going to play a really important role in our podcast. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So every time we do the pod or an episode or a podcast, we're gonna start by doing a show and tell, something that's we've been kind of just like, I don't know, seeing, experiencing, or enjoying, or think is like relevant, or just want to share with everyone that we're finding interesting, or yeah, just something interesting that's happened during the week that we want to be able to communicate or discuss or just laugh about. So that's
Okay,
what it's gonna be.
cool. So I'm going to go first then.
All right then.
Which one should I show? Okay, well, I'm going to go with the safe option.
All right then. Why
All
the
my
safe
options are
option?
safe
Hold on. Why the safe option?
because I don't know if we can share other like organizations and brands and things like that.
All right then. Fine. You do that then. Yeah. I'll probe you next time. Get the unsafe option. Let's start with the safe option
Okay,
then.
okay. So I am going to share with you. Can you see?
All right.
This is a book that I started reading. So I'm an avid reader. I love reading many books. Last year I read 20 books and I want to up my goal this year. So this book is The Rise of Christianity and it's by a guy called Rodney Stark.
Okay.
And yeah, I just really want to know. Obviously, I've been a Christian my whole life, but I want to know how Christianity has played a role throughout the centuries. Like, what changes has it made in society? How has it affected kind of the landscape of the communities that have happened? So, yeah, it's been a journey and I'm learning a lot. And I think I need to read more books like this year, just like the history of Christianity and the history of things that are important to me. So this is my book to start the year.
That is fire. That is fire. It's really interesting actually. Much like you, I love to read, and I'll be inundating you with books and literature in
Yeah.
weeks to come. But what I have today is, you guessed it. You guessed it. Do you know what this is? No, you don't. Let me
What
explain.
is that?
It's blackberry jam.
Right,
But it's not
okay.
just any blackberry jam. It says La Vieja Fabrica Est 1834. So it wasn't made like 2 weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? These guys have
And
been
do you know
in the
what that
business.
means? Can you
What?
translate what that means for us? what you just
Okay,
said.
Paris, how is that relevant to what we're doing right now?
It's a jam that you highly recommend. So,
Okay, but my job as a consumer is just to eat the jam, right? I don't have to do all
fair
that
enough.
backstory research, fam. And I
Okay.
can tell you, without telling you anything about what it says, that it hits the spot. This is the jam of the year, and so
Okay.
it's doing bits. So,
So
yeah,
is that
anyone
jam
want to
a 10 out of 10?
9 out of 10, nine
Oh,
out of
nine,
ten. It's
nine out of
it's
10.
it's it's that good. I mean, nine's high for me. Do you know what I mean? I'm still leaving space for other discovery in life. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's where I am. Anyway.
Understandable. Well, great stuff. We hope that you enjoyed our show and tell, and you'll see what else we have throughout the future episodes.
Yeah, that's gonna be fire. But I mean, for now, I mean, this is a pod. Okay, we're gonna talk about that later. But in essence, this is a pod that's supposed to engage us as youth workers, as people in the youth work landscape. So the first question at the very inception of this pod is, I want to ask you, Paris, like, I mean, what is a youth worker, or what is youth ministry? What is this about? What do you think?
So, in my mind, a youth worker is someone that chooses to journey alongside young people. So, it's offering them support, it's being a safe person for them to talk to and to share their hopes, their dreams, their challenges that they're facing. And it's someone that is committed to walking beside them and helping them through that, whether it's through community programs, whether it's church,
Mm,
whether it's maybe a service that's in school, just dedicated to helping a young person. Yeah. What do you
yeah.
think a youth worker is?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think I was saying to you the other day, I was like, okay, we have youth work, okay, or your
Mm,
youth worker, but you don't have an adult worker. Do you know what I mean? You probably have
yeah.
another job for any kind of interaction with adults. So what's specific about youth, that makes it a specific work? And I guess
Mm,
in my mind was this idea that actually the adolescent stage or the youth stage is very specific in how it shapes your life. Sometimes people or researchers will say those are the formative years, or the formative years of your development are within that the confines of that kind of period of your life. And so
yeah.
it's a space, or it's a time or a season in life that is peculiar, in that people are navigating adolescence, and they need someone to walk alongside them in a special way. Because by the time you're an adult, sometimes, of course, you definitely need people to walk alongside you, but it's just a different phase.
Yeah.
And so people involved in youth work journey with young people, as you were saying, in a specific way to be able to help them navigate this particular space. But
Mhm.
the other thing I wanted to say was, I mean, the idea of youth ministry. So the word ministry, generally speaking, at least in a biblical sense, talks about serving. It's the same word that's
Yeah.
used for a deacon, for example, in the Bible. And so it's this idea of attending to the needs of someone. And so by the time we say youth ministry, we're talking about peculiar needs of a peculiar season that need a
Mm,
peculiar service, a specific way that we serve young people. So it's just, yeah, as you said, walking alongside young people and serving them in a specific way that caters for the season of life that they're in.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think also in the context, because obviously we are a Christian organization. So for us, I think being a youth worker has an additional kind of responsibilities that we're also representing Jesus, and we're wanting to hopefully share the love of Jesus with them and, equip them in their own faith journey. So I think for us, working at Urban Saints, that's another responsibility that we have. Yeah.
I mean, that is so true. I was, I'm always laughing at this because it's so funny. I recently, obviously, I'm not from the UK, so I came here
Hmm.
in London like maybe 3 years ago, and I discovered Sam's Chicken. And it's so funny because Sam's Chicken, their like tagline is the Ministry of Chicken. It's so
Oh, is
funny. They
it?
call it
Okay.
literally the taglines, the Ministry of Chicken. And I have to say, they do serve some good, they serve our needs, fam. They do what we need to do. And they're better than, I mean, this is controversial, but I think they're better than KFC, but I'll keep that on the DL. But the
I'm
thing
not
is,
involved.
but you can, if we're talking about youth ministry, they're talking about ministering chicken. They're serving a particular
Mm,
need, our desire for hunger and taste, uh,
mm,
with or our hunger with the taste of chicken or the feeding of chicken. But we're talking about, especially in Christian circles, youth ministry being serving the need that ultimately young people have and all
yeah.
humanity has to know Jesus.
Yeah.
And so the experience of Jesus and the experience of the gospel is different in the adolescence stage, and that's what is at the
Mm.
forefront of youth work and youth ministry for a lot of church organizations, parachurch organizations, and for us in this space.
Yeah. So to go on from that then, we've obviously been young people. Well, I'm
Yeah.
still young, but we've been teenagers. We've had people that have journeyed alongside us in our youth, in our childhood. So can you tell me about some of the experiences you've had as a young person and what maybe youth workers around you did, how they impacted your life when you were younger? Yeah, can you share those experiences with us?
Yeah, I mean, I'll first start by pointing out that you said, "Oh, I'm young," as if I was, I don't know, some ancient. I'm kidding. Anyway, let me move on. Moving on swiftly. Yeah, I mean, for me, I came to faith at the age of 17 in a youth
Okay.
group at a church, and the thing for me was, um, I mean, I remember just thinking, and this was, I suppose, the combination of many thoughts, but the foremost thought that I had in my head was, why am I hanging around with all these like unreliable friends? I just want to go to a space where I have, friends who are reliable. They don't hide anything. They don't need to, put up a sort of facade or anything like that. And I went to a youth group that I knew was in the church that my stepsister was attending. I was going there, but kind of on and off. I wasn't really paying attention. But at 17, I just felt like compelled to go there. And what I found there was a space that was safe
Mm.
enough to show that I don't have to hide necessarily behind some kind of facade or persona that oftentimes young people have to deal with. They're dealing with a whole host of preferred identities, I'd say, that society is preferring to them and saying, listen, this is what you need to be likable, to be
Yeah.
loved, to be accepted. And I didn't have to do that. And so the youth workers who presided over that space created the safe space that I had and that I
Mm.
needed to be able to just air out who I was. With all my flaws and weaknesses and insecurity, I could just be who I am. I didn't have
Yeah.
to, subscribe to some of these identities that I found. And that's what they were for me. They journeyed with me. I remember one called Dave Myberg. Shout out, Dave, you're an absolute legend. But he used to teach me, and that was, yeah, in another church, but he used to teach us the Bible, but we do activities as well. So we'd
Okay.
have fun, but we'd also engage with faith. And that was really
Mm.
important for me at that stage. But I'm curious to know what your experience of a youth worker, youth leader was.
Yeah, so I've grown up in church my whole life, and um, my church had a youth organization called Pathfinders, and I don't know if any of you would know what that is, but we go camping. We're a bit like the Christian version of Scouts, so we do like drilling and marching. We learn about Jesus. We go camping. So every Tuesday and Sunday, I would go to Pathfinders, the youth group, where volunteers, youth workers would obviously be leading the sessions and looking after us. So pretty much for my whole childhood, that was the youth group that I was a part of. And now being on the other side of like being in an organization that equips volunteers, I'm now realizing that they gave so much of their free time to us young people.
Yeah.
They camped with us, they were there week in, week out, and they were really a part of like my growing up. Like they've seen me at all different stages and they've supported me. And even now, when I go back to my old church and I visit and I'm around the people that have seen me when I was like 16, when I was 12 in these youth groups, and I'm so happy to see them because they've been a big part of my life, a
Mhm.
big support. They're always a friendly face. And I think they just kind of encourage you to be the best that you could be. All different kids we're all different. We're loud, we all have different personalities. So to manage all different types of young people and to want to help them grow closer to Jesus and to be the best they can be, to help them identify their strengths, their talents that they can also use within church and outside. I think
Yeah.
it's a really valuable role and like they should be appreciated. So shout out to everyone at GBK Pathfinders, my childhood youth group. Yeah.
Nice.
But for you, like, can you identify like maybe one particular youth person, youth worker, like what characteristics did they have that really like stuck out to you, like can really I guess, kind of impacted you personally? Can you identify, maybe think of someone in your head and like what they were
Absolutely.
like?
Straight, like literally, like I know his name, Dave Myberg. So I, yeah, spent some time in a church in South Africa, and that's where I was living at the
Mm,
time. And yeah, I mean, I used to go to that youth group, and Dave was the leader. And I mean, he was good at kind of creating sessions for us to interact with the Bible and the gospel. But
mm,
then there were also like, it was just that the idea that, he was very like human, if that makes sense. He was like, he
mm,
had his own interests. You know what I mean? It's not like because he was a youth leader, he had this halo of, I'm kind of, oh, I'm really holy and I'm here to instruct you guys. But it
yeah.
was really journeying with, as opposed to telling you how to do it. It was very much like come alongside as opposed to let me tell you what to kind of do. And I
Mm,
think he just had a very encouraging demeanor. Do you know what I mean? He would have his interests and we would talk about stuff, I think like rugby. And he was what made it very relevant, or made him relevant as a youth leader or youth worker, was the fact that he was in the world, and I know this is cheesy, and I vowed I'd never say something so cheesy, but he was in in the world, but not of it. So he
yeah.
knew that rugby games were going on and stuff like that, and all these events were happening. Rugby's big in South Africa, so we'd
Mm,
be able to like say, "Oh, did you watch the game?" and all that kind of stuff, and there'd be all this banter. You know how it is as lads. You just want to have banter with someone, but then he'd also be rooted. He was a person who was, you know, uh, clued up on things that were going on, like in our lives, that the everyday kind of person or young person would be going through. But also, he'd be able to also weave his faith into that kind of dynamic, and that was really.
yeah.
He was just relatable and
Mm,
relevant. You don't want someone who's out of date, I guess. Well, at least my perspective. So that was big for me.
yeah, that's true. For me,
Yeah.
there's two people that I can think of, but one was a guy called Helderberg, and
Right.
he was the director for a number of years, of the youth group. And what stood out to me about him was that he was just like, you can tell that he genuinely cared about the young people and about the needs of the young people within the church. And like,
Yeah.
even though as young people we might stress him out a little bit, you can tell that like he had a passion for what he was doing. He went out of his way to help the youth. If there was people that could not make it to the youth group, he would go and pick them up to make sure that they could attend. So I think
Yeah.
it's that, like, going out of your way to make sure that the young person has what they need, that they can be included, that they can be involved, and just showing that care, like, being committed to caring, essentially. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that is it's a sacrificial role, and sometimes
it is.
that's not really appreciated in certain circles, but it is a sacrificial role. And I think the
Mm,
more people grow up, like now we look back and we're like, oh, flip, man, there is some sacrifice involved in that kind of role. But yeah, I mean interested to kind of, I mean that was, it's good to kind of reflect, and I'm glad we've kind of
mm,
just looked back at that, because you kind of grow up and you just like you forget sometimes some of the impact that
yeah.
people have had on you. But I'm thinking, I mean, that's some of the stuff that we're going to discuss today. But going forward, like in the future, yeah, tell us, Farish, like what can we expect from this podcast?
Okay, so from the Hear Us Out podcast, you can expect real, raw conversations. We want to explore what it is to be a youth worker. We want to get other youth workers' perspectives. We want to discuss what's happening on the ground within our communities and how we can help to equip those that are working with young people, and how we can support one another in this work that we're doing. And yeah, we just want to have some real conversations and just open the floor. So we want to have some guests on eventually, and we want to have many conversations with them. What about for you? What do you see the future of the pod looking like?
Yeah, absolutely. Right on that kind of trail. Yeah, just having that kind of open dialogue, that candid, open, honest dialogue about what it feels like to be a youth worker. It's a very interesting, it almost feels like a liminal professional career, in the sense that sometimes people don't, it's a very, I mean, there's talk about stuff like it being a very transitory kind of space that people occupy for a season, but they're always envisioning moving forward. And we'll talk about that later, but it I feel like it's important to kind of appreciate it as a segment of society that needs protection, that needs development, that needs appreciation and the space to be able to talk about some of these things. But I mean, obviously, I'm involved as the youth engagement and content coordinator in all kinds of research that I think is germane and relevant to youth work more generally. So just discussing some of the research and some data stuff that comes out that is relevant to us as youth workers and helps us to navigate that space. Like, for example, I'm going to drop you with this. This is my data kind of insight for this week. But it's I think the conversation around youth work and youth ministry is really important in this particular context, because we're talking about a country that perhaps, for example, we're in the UK, right? And this is a country that's historically well affiliated with the gospel and Christianity, but now we're living in a postmodernist kind of phase where I was reading, so Barna, in cooperation with Biblica and World Vision, published the Open Generation research that was in 2021 to 2022. I really encourage youth workers to get a hold of that, because it's a huge study. I mean, they interviewed more than 25,000, young people between 13 and 17 years of age to ask them about the intersection between their lives and their faith and their responses and how they see faith. And we're talking about a country that now the teenagers amongst that 13 to, or within that 13 to 17 demographic, 42% would say that they have a Christian faith, which is actually less than the majority. So we're talking about a country that actually is on the whole not Christian, if we're just going to split it like that, and only 10% say that they actually believe they can have a relationship with Jesus. So it's interesting. You identify with the faith, but some people who identify with the faith don't think they can have a relationship with Jesus. So what does that mean for us trying to reach the people who don't have an understanding of the gospel and Jesus' love? So that's going to be interesting. It's part of the stuff that we want to be sharing with youth workers, those kind of insights to help them navigate their landscape. So
it's good. It's going to be great to kind of look at the research that you bring. Nesu is going to be our researcher. He has a lot of information and insight, so it's going to be good to break that down and to really understand what that research means and what we can do with it moving forward. So that's going to be something exciting and worthwhile sharing as well. Any final thoughts for our first episode that you want to leave with the people, our very first listeners? What would you like to leave them with today?
I think, the one thing I want to say is, I don't know if I should write to the committee or whatever, I don't know, whatever body presides over the Nobel Peace Prize, because, peace comes in many ways, right? And a sandwich, let me tell you, a sandwich with this kind of, why are you laughing? This is serious business, Paris.
Okay.
A sandwich with this jam, I think the person needed. I actually Googled it the other day, but like it was, we got lost in the maze of who really came up with jam. But people need to appreciate stuff like this. All right, this is serious business. Health for the soul and joy for the spirit. Jam. That's all I want to say.
So, in a couple episodes' time, we're going to have a sponsorship by that jam company, by God's grace. So we'll look forward to that.
What about you? Do you have any final thoughts? Something more substantial.
My final thoughts. Let me be the sensible one. My final thoughts, guys, is don't be afraid to put yourself out there, whether that's volunteering to do something that's worthwhile in your community, whether it's sharing your creativity, sharing your work, whether it's starting that piece of content. Maybe you want to talk about Jesus online, maybe you want to just share advice and help online. Don't be afraid to start, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. We are putting ourselves out there by starting this podcast, and by God's grace, it's going to bear much fruit and going to be a great podcast. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there and do something new, as we are doing. Yeah.
Fab. Well, I'm going to end in the words of my young person. Let's go!
Let's go. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Stay tuned for episode 2 of the hearUSout podcast, what Evan says. Bye, everyone.
Deuces.